Good afternoon, everybody. Everybody's having a good time? Yeah. Is everybody, anybody awake in the audience? Just make some noise. Yeah, that kind of sound sounds better. So first, I'm very excited. We have two, I think top class would be understatement speakers. We have Shari Redstone and Jimmy Maymann. I'll let you guys introduce yourself. Just a brief introduction, but Shari, maybe you go first.
Wow, I've never done that before, but
Israeli style.
I guess so. It's good. All right, so all together, I'm Shari Redstone. I think I'm here in the capacity as co-founder and managing partner of Advancit Capital. We invest in early-stage companies in media, entertainment, and technology. And I'm also vice chair of Viacom and CBS. So it's kind of interesting to see where the whole multi-channel network fits in with these more traditional media companies.
And when you refer to Viacom, just for the people in the audience, if there's a great deal of people outside of America, can you tell us a little bit about the more known brands of Viacom, just so people know? MTV?
Of course, all of our brands are the more known brands. But that being said, MTV Networks, Spike TV, Comedy Central, Paramount Studios. Nickelodeon, of course.
And on Viacom now, CBS, it's two
CBS is our other company, so that's CBS and Showtime with CBS Films. So we're getting there, and today we announced a deal actually in the UK, so we just going to be acquiring Channel 5. So we're expanding and growing.
Yeah, and what about something about movie theaters, films?
Oh yes, I guess I do that too. So I also run the parent company of Viacom and CBS, and while it's not my day job, I still oversee that business, and we own movie theaters in the United States, United Kingdom, Russia, Chile, Argentina. Actually, we just sold Chile, Argentina, and Brazil. And it's interesting because while it sounds like a lot of diverse things I do, at the end of the day, it all comes down to content, which is what we're here to talk about today.
Great, thanks. Jimmy Maymann, CEO of Huffington Post. Tell us also a few words about yourself.
Yes, my name is Jimmy Maymann. I'm a serial entrepreneur that sold my last business to AOL 3.5 years ago. And since I was hanging out at AOL, they decided that they needed a CEO for HuffPost. So now I'm the CEO of HuffPost, which was acquired a week after I sold my business. So at HuffPost, we're focusing on taking the brand global, and we're focusing on going into video, where we've launched HuffPost Live. And obviously, this session is partly about video, so we can talk a little bit about that later.
And maybe, can you tell us a few words about that startup you sold to AOL?
Oh yeah, the startup I sold to AOL was an online video distribution platform, which is now part of AOL's video offering. It's now part of AOL On, but it was a European player.
Excellent. So we have in this panel, maybe just a few words about myself. I'm doing early stage investments and sometimes entrepreneurship out of Israel, mostly consumer internet startups, mostly things that kind of on the cross line between technology and entertainment. I'm also, as Steffi mentioned, a founder of an Israeli-based multi-channel network to YouTube, and that kind of leads to one of the next questions we're going to ask you guys. Is we see today that multi-channel networks. Anybody in the crowd knows what multi-channel networks is? Anybody doesn't know? Who heard about? Okay, so maybe we should clarify that a little bit. Anybody heard about the Maker Studio, Machinima? So these are aggregators and producer of original content, mostly to the YouTube ecosystem, but online in general. And today you can go online and watch TV, watch shows, watch sometimes even feature films, and it's all running over the top. People can access it from their PCs, from their cell phones. Soon most TVs are already connected, but soon people will have good enough user experience to watch this content in their living room on the big screen. And we see now Maker Studio, the company I mentioned, was acquired by Disney in a very large deal. And that was after they got an investment from Time Warner, who also invested in a multi-channel network called Machinima. Time Warner invested. Comcast invested in a network called Fullscreen. Bertelsmann in Europe acquired Broadband TV. Disney also bought a company called Awesomeness TV. ProSieben, I think, made a big investment in the collective. So we see a lot of the big media companies entering in that space. Maybe, Shari, you can tell us a word about the perspective of a large media company when they go to make an acquisition or an investment like this. Why is everybody doing it?
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons why it makes sense now for multi-channel networks to be partnering with some of the traditional media companies. And I think we find that the more things change, and they are really, really changing, they actually are still the same, which is that content will always be king. And I think that what you find now as a traditional media company is the ability to really connect with your audience, but not so much in the way that you really want to be able to reach them. And I think a lot of the technologies that have been out there allow you to know who your audience is, allow you to connect with them in a more meaningful way. And when you connect that with what's going on the multi-channel networks, some of them are able to provide you with a mass audience where you can promote your brands. Some of them are able to provide you with a more targeted audience where, depending upon what your content is, you'll be able to reach your consumer in a more meaningful way. And I think what some of these companies are seeing is that they can take some of their traditional content, some of their traditional talent, and provide opportunities for them on some of these multi-channel networks, as well as looking at the multi-channel networks for the talent, for some of the content that's being created. Maybe look to some of the stars who they might be able to experiment with or test new ideas for content with. So I think it opens the pool for content creation in a lot of ways for the traditional media companies, and provides a lot of opportunities for them for creation and distribution and monetization of the content they have.
And I know you're here not in the capacity or not representing Viacom or CBS, but you think in theory, as somebody who knows the business, they will also at some point join the other big conglomerates and do something like that, maybe take a different angle, just from a general perspective?
I never speak for any companies where I'm not the one making a decision at that particular moment in time, and I don't think anybody knows what the future brings. But I think what's important isn't whether you acquire a company, but how you figure out how you're going to partner with that company to grow your business. And if you're a multi-channel network, there are so many things you're doing well. One of the things I think the traditional companies can help you with are finding different ways to monetize your content. You know, when YouTube first started, I used to ask people questions. What is it that's success? Is it success if you achieve top status on a YouTube channel? What does it mean? And I think as these companies start to work together, it provides so much more talent for the traditional companies and the talent to be able to reach the people and their fans, and for people on these YouTube channels to have other ways to create their content, to show their content, and to distribute on different platforms.
Jimmy, so your AOL is not a multi-channel network per se, but in a certain way, they are de facto multi-channel network, and they're also a diversified media company. It exists to begin with more on online, but how do you see this disruption affect the AOL business and just the industry in general?
No, from an industry perspective, of course, we are at a very interesting inflection point, I think, because a lot of the things are suddenly coming together. Technology has democratized media, and obviously also broadband and the penetration of broadband has allowed us now to actually stream those things. So it's very interesting to see kind of in a very short period of time how these MCNs has been able to create a platform that are gathering a lot of online talent, because at the end of the day, that's really how they've started. But the interesting thing is they started with the online talent, but actually now a lot of the more traditional talent are actually moving on to these platforms because they want to get in on the online, because they understand that this is kind of a huge growth area. But it's interesting to see some of these guys. If you take Maker Studios, you talked about as an example, you have the Swedish PewDiePie, who's got 25 million followers, right? And in his own right is a brand, is an online brand, and is making a lot of money on the things he's doing in his channel, which honestly, from my perspective, is not very sophisticated. He's watching games and commenting games as he plays and as he goes, but that's what working with the millennials. And I think that is actually the last thing here, is that this is also a generational thing, right? It is a channel that it's pretty much appealing to the millennial generation, and I think a lot of those guys are not tapping into traditional media the way other generations has done. So if you want to talk to that generation and actually get your content in front of that generation, I think this is obviously one of the platforms and one of the ways you need to understand how to play, and you know, that goes for, you know, the big cable companies. Of course, it goes for a media company like AOL.
And do you think that this kind of disruption at the end of the day is a tailwind to AOL's activity on video? It's competition, it's a little bit of both. Where do you see this whole...
I see it as an opportunity. Right now, I don't see it as a competition to what AOL is doing in the video space, but it you know, since AOL now, from an online video advertising perspective in the US, is the biggest player, then of course they need to, you know, look at kind of what else is going out there, and obviously with Disney now moving, you know, strongly into this field and really putting serious money behind it, of course that will create consolidation. There will be other players that will now look deeper at this and kind of find out what their approach is to this, and of course I believe AOL, like other companies, will have those thoughts as well.
And do you see AOL start producing things for TV now because Disney is doing things on the internet and etc., or
you know, obviously I'm not responsible for AOL's video strategy.
So HuffPost, for that matter.
But if you ask Ran Hanervo, who's also an Israeli, who's actually responsible for AOL's video strategy, you know, I think, you know, he's of course looking at all these things, as I say, and are finding ways. AOL actually just had their new fronts on Tuesday, where they launched 15 new original series that they've produced, which is, you know, high quality, very expensive productions. And obviously the reason why AOL is now doing that is because suddenly you have scale in online video, and as an online media company, with scale comes opportunity to monetize, and that's obviously why for a media company it's interesting to look at this, and it's also interesting from HuffPost's perspective, obviously, to find out how do we play in that area. Right now, obviously, we are playing in it from the news angle, but are there other things that we can do that's broader than just news in the online space?
Just
Excellent.
one comment,
Please.
you know, when you talk about the millennial generation, I mean, right now they look at content as content. They don't really distinguish. I don't even know what TV is going to mean to these, you know, kids now when they grow up. So I think the lines between traditional television and the content that's created on multi-channel networks, and when you look at whatever TV everywhere means, which would be another whole panel, I think all of these things are going to merge. And at the end of the day, they create opportunities for everybody. I think originally, you know, traditional media companies were kind of concerned about what all of this content was and what was going to happen and what was going to compete. But what has been really interesting to me is I kind of made the jump from being in the traditional media space to dealing with some of these new companies in media, entertainment, and technology, is that they both really do need each other, and they both can learn from each other in the success and the ability to monetize your traditional assets while reaching the millennial generations on these new distribution platforms, and the ability of these new technologies to be able to work with these traditional media companies is really what will determine the success for everybody, and really be, I think, at the end of the day, a big win for, you know, the viewer and the consumer.
I think you're right. I think the thing here, it starts with the content, right? It still starts with the content, and that's obviously also why we're seeing you know, young media company like Wise Media, who's now, you know, started again like an online player, but are now doing HBO series and stuff like that. And the reason why they're able to cut deals like that is obviously because their content is appealing to a broader audience. It's not just an online audience, it works across other platforms. And I think we'll see more and more of that, because content at this point in time great content can come from many different sources. And I think, you know, as I said in my beginning statement, I think because media has been democratized, it will come from many more sources than what we've been used to. So it's really a matter of kind of finding out how you source that and how you then, you know, play that across your different platforms.
Yeah, I also actually agree, and I apologize to the audience because if you wanted to watch people fight on the panel, I apologize for this consensus. But I think today maybe we know something we didn't know a year ago about how this market will shape up, and it's really we see more and more regular internet approaches applied into the space. So just a good example, we heard yesterday from David Stern from the NBA that they have about 600 million followers and social media users, etc. And now they also have 60 million users of NBA TV. That's the online service to watch every NBA game. It's in addition to TNT and ESPN and all of that, and it costs $200 a year per subscriber, and they have 60 million. So just do the math. 60 million times 200, it's a lot. And that's just from online, not to mention everything else they're doing. So we can really start seeing again the internet as the funnel to start getting users, and then maybe convert some of them to paying subscribers, customers, what have you. And the content is king because you want to watch the same game. Do you see in your world any more examples of content that used to be on the TV and now getting to other platforms as well? Do you, at least in the companies you're a board member with in Shari, do you try to encourage them to take these steps, or to be more careful and cautious before you free all your content?
Oh, I always throw caution to the wind. But that being said, I think that you're just really beginning to see that take place now. I think even when you saw Fox do the deal with Wigs, which had some great, shows on YouTube, it becomes a great opportunity to create content at a price that you can really afford to experiment and to innovate and to kind of take a chance. So I don't think we've seen that much yet in terms of the turnover, but I think people are going to be really focused on who are the stars on YouTube, who are the stars, on all of these different platforms, and trying to figure out how you can use them to create new content, either with your traditional talent or separately. And I think that's going to really be a big piece of what we see going forward.
Now, speaking of talents, both of you mentioned the talent angle, which now is key. Seems there's a very big battle for talent. Maybe, Jimmy, you can tell us a little bit what you guys do at both Huffington Post and AOL as far as the talents. Is this an important part of your strategy?
For HuffPost, it's not so much. Of course, we've gone heavily into online video. We now stream, HuffPost Live 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and of course we need host that in a sense is talented, but at the same time we've since media has been democratized, part of what we're doing there as well is actually trying to get the community and the people to take part in the conversation, because the great thing about online video when you do it live is actually it's a two-way thing. It's not broadcasting anymore, right? So you can actually connect with an audience that's not necessarily in the same room. You can use technology like Google Hangout, like Skype, and we've had over the 18 months we've done HuffPost Live, we've had more than 20,000 people that are coming in and taking part in the conversation, and I think that is really what is interesting right now, the way you can use media to actually create community, to actually enhance the discussion and conversation. And I think it's the same that goes for those MCNs out there. Of course they need talent, and there's a few that will flourish and get to the top, but it's also about the community, it's also about the platform. And I think the last thing is, I think when we talk about the MCNs, the next big discussion is really the monetization. Right now they start to have scale, but there's still some huge challenges when it comes to monetization, and for people that are in the industry, obviously they just created Gova, which is the big MCNs are going together to actually agree on how they're going to attack the broader problem here, which is in many ways the platform, because as people that are in the industry is aware, YouTube is taking a quite big cut from the MCNs right now, and YouTube is the place to be right now because there's not an ecosystem outside of YouTube.
Yeah, I gotta have to say, by the way, a comment. People, I don't know how many of you follow the industry about all the complaints about YouTube taking a 45% rev share of the YouTube income, while it literally cost them nothing to add any channel and content. And I just want to say to all these people who probably speak from their position and criticize, you build the whole server, farm distribution system, fiber optic, etc., and we'll see if you can do it for less than 45% of what YouTube will give it to you. So I think, again, YouTube, as always, they own the platform. Sometimes they might be a bit aggressive with their partners and etc. But if these networks can really live up to their claim, they should go ahead and start a new YouTube. I've been hearing it for 2 years. I didn't.
No, you're right, but they're the only place right now where you have to scale. That's where 80% of the online video eyeballs right now, honestly, they're on YouTube. So if you want to play that game right now, you need to be on YouTube, and you need to create a business that can work under those terms. And then, of course, if your brands get strong enough, then hopefully you would think that you could take some of your audience and move it outside of YouTube. I'm not at Mega Studio, at Full Screen, or at any of the other players, but I'm sure that That's some of the thinking they have. And of course now also with all the big media companies moving in, Disney and those kind of guys can give them potentially a scale and access to things that they didn't have in the past as a standalone business.
Yeah, and I actually think a good example from, we were talking about Comedy Central. They have, I think, a weekly show called The Annoying Orange, which was a brand creating exclusively on YouTube. It's a very basic editing of an orange with a face that tells very silly jokes, I would say, but it built an audience, and then they went on TV, to TV. So I'm sure in TV they're making probably more money than they ever did on YouTube, right?
I think what you're going to see is you're going to maybe start to see some windowing, like we have in the theater business, where things are going to launch on YouTube and grow an audience, and then they'll be able to maybe survive on your own site, or sites will get together. And you're going to have platforms out there, even like Hulu, which has all the eyeballs for a lot of the traditional content, starting to get into the digital content. What if that became a platform, for some of the creators now of digital content? They've got the eyeballs there. There are other, platforms out there that could do a shift where you already have an audience that might be able to provide some competition to YouTube. But without a doubt, there needs to be some competition, and the monetization model needs to change.
I think it will definitely evolve, but I'm just saying right now, at least when they also bring the eyeballs, not just the platform, but the distribution, they have a very big head start, and I think they're here to stay the dominant player, at least for the foreseeable future. Now, one last personal question to both of you. I'll start again now with Jimmy. You originally come from Denmark, and now you're running a big media company in the States. And we see companies, and at least the TV content business company like Endemol from the Netherlands, and we see a few Israeli companies selling formats all the time, and companies from Denmark, directors from quality film you always had in Denmark, but now companies like yours from Video You Affect, AOL. How do you see the whole internationalization of the business?
No, of course, that's, from my perspective, that's one of the things I came on to do, and one of the things that we've tried to do with HuffPost. The internet, in many ways, is global, and often you forget that when you're in the US, because it's such a big, home market, but it's only 4% of the global internet population, right? So if you have, business models that, can work outside of the US, of course, you owe it to yourself to test out, how well will they fare, how big can you grow the business, and we started our internationalization 2.5 years ago. We are now at 90 million unique visitors on a monthly basis. 50% of that is international. 2.5 years.
50%, really?
50% now is international. So, of course, we tested it out first. We made small steps in the beginning, testing out whether the model actually worked outside of the US. But as soon as we saw that it worked, we've been very aggressive. We've launched 11 markets over the last 2.5 years. So we've been very aggressive on the international opportunity, and it's something that we're still very aggressive about. We'll launch another 3 markets this year because that's where we're still growing in the US, but we're not seeing double-digit growth in the US anymore, and our growth is outside of the US. So that's definitely a very interesting area for us.
And that's as far as distribution. What about scouting for talents, finding? Because today the next genius creator that came with something that nobody saw could be anywhere.
No, but that's the great thing about making your business into an international or even a global one is that as an example, we launched in Japan, right? And Japan, from a mobile perspective, we talk a lot about the second screen. In Japan, it's the first screen, right? It's kind of like, on our side, 80% of the readers are coming via mobile devices, right? That means that it's a very different mindset they have, both from a tech and product perspective. And actually, we had a lot of learnings when we came back from there, a lot of things that we had to rethink in terms of what we're doing here in the US. So that's a great thing when you kind of start to branch out, I think, is that you find those pockets of innovation and you bring them back and obviously, use that across the other businesses you have. So that's definitely one of the great things of going global.
Yeah, this is actually, I couldn't identify more with this, at least from countries like Israel or Denmark. They're very small. There's hardly any domestic market. This is why Israel is the startup nation, because nobody wants to conquer the market in Israel. Everybody is aiming to the world and speak the language, and now we see that in content. This is actually why I started investing in content because I think this can be extrapolated as well. People will come up with new ideas, innovative ideas. Today it's easier than ever to get into the system somewhere in the world, and if the content is good, like Shari said, content is king, it will float. Now maybe you can tell us also a couple of words about the internalization of the business as somebody who comes from America and where everything is concentrated to.
Well, it's interesting. I think the international markets and looking beyond your domestic market is always the opportunity for growth. I know when I was kind of doing the bricks and mortar business and building theaters, it was always fascinating to me to go into another country and see what I could learn. Because at the end of the day, we're all dealing with the same problems. And I think we all looked at technology, or at least I did many years ago, not so many years ago, as something you sit on a computer and you kind of sit in your room and it isolates people. But the truth is, I think right now technology really allows you to personalize the experiences that you have, for your patrons, for your customers. It really allows you to have a more global look at your business. I love doing business in other countries because I learned so much from it. In our movie theaters, we started a concept in Brazil called Divine Divans, where we put beds in the first 2 rows of seats so that people could have a good angle, and everybody kind of laughed at us, and we brought that forward.
I would do it in universities, by the way.
I'm sure there are a lot of places we could do that one. But it's interesting, and I just look, at our business always as different things. I think we're going to experiment in Brazil with one of the companies, a multi-channel network that we invested in called Me Too Networks, which is aggregating Hispanic content, and using our theaters in Brazil to really work with some of the stars on that channel to kind of create like an opportunity to maybe have some kind of live content creation that we can really mix the two together. So whether you're looking at international markets, you're looking at technology, everything comes together. And what's really interesting, as I think about it, is even looking at the bricks and mortar business, we're kind of dealing with the same issues that we're dealing when we're talking about digital changes. And everything does come together in the end and integrate and really help you look at your business in a much better, more effective way.
Excellent. So on that note, I want to again thank Jimmy Maymann, CEO of Huffington Post, Shari Redstone, Vice Chairman, Viacom, CBS, owner of Advancit Capital. I'm forgetting a few of the titles.
It all comes together.
But thank you very much. You guys were very insightful. Thank you.